Hi everyone, my name's Anna Thurgood. I work at the State Library of Queensland, which is where I am today. I'm the curator of our new exhibition, 22 Decades of Queensland Photography. And today is a part of our Behind the Lens 20 Curators Talk series. I'm lucky enough to have Stephen Booth with me, who's one of the photographers featured in the exhibition. So hi Stephen, thanks for coming along.
Hello, thank you.
I'd just like to remind our audiences that Stephen and I will be online taking your questions and responding to your comments and feedback. So please feel free to keep sending those in throughout. We'll get straight into the questions. So Stephen, I'm asking everybody this. I just would like to know, when did you first get into photography?
I'd always sort of been interested in it. I used to fiddle with my dad's cameras. He wasn't a photographer, but he was kind of a keen amateur. I used to fiddle with those when I was a kid. And then I ended up doing a film and photography degree at Griffith. That was probably early 90s. I did a film and photography degree, cross-registered at Queensland College of Art. And that's what kind of sparked it, was actually studying it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what sort of camera did you use back then?
Gosh, when I first started that photography course, I basically did the foundation year of photography at QCA. I didn't own a camera, so I borrowed a friend's, which was it's probably a early 70s Praktica 35mm Czech one, which is pretty hard to find now. And then I moved into Nikon gear, Nikon FEs, FAs, F3s, F4s, that sort of stuff. So I started off with a borrowed camera.
Okay, very good. Yes, because cameras were always quite expensive, weren't they? Expensive gear.
It wasn't a cheap thing to study, because even the cameras and also the consumables, your film and your paper and your chemistry and stuff, were a lot more expensive, which has changed a bit now, obviously.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so the exhibition 20 features some of your photographs, which are from the very early 2000s, based around the live music scene. So there's photographs of the Livid Festival and a Go-Betweens mixing desk from their concert at the Tivoli. So was this around the time you were first getting started professionally? And how did you get your first professional gig?
I was studying. I'd worked in like public radio and stuff before. I had lots of friends who were musicians. So I was studying photography. I was going to a lot of shows, and I kind of put the two together and started just shooting shows I was at for myself. And going home and processing film and making prints in my bedroom. It was all very DIY. I finally started getting some results I liked, and then I submitted those to some street press. I think it was Time Off and Rave in Brisbane in the first instance. And I got some printed with reviews of shows, and then they actually started asking me, sort of commissioned me to go and cover shows. And that led on from there. That's sort of how it began.
Okay, fantastic. So you were just doing it because you wanted to, you felt the need to. I think that's
practice while I was studying, and I was in an environment where there was music going on, so the two went together kind of naturally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
makes sense. So have you been able to make a full-time living from photography as a career, or have you had to supplement it?
Sometimes. It can be sporadic. I've always had another job. I've always been about 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40, either way. But it's always been split, and I've always kind of enjoyed having more than one thing going on anyway. I work I work as a librarian in a law school, as well as doing music photography, which couldn't be much more opposite, really. But I like the difference. I like doing different things on different days. It has sort of been necessary. Like, I've got friends who've done very well going and shooting weddings. I tried to do that. It wasn't really my thing, which is what you've really got to do if you want to make a full-time living. So I guess having the part-time job has given me the multiple interests, and also given me the freedom to do the photography I want and the job I want. So it's a good combination for me. Yeah. I've never really pushed to go completely full-time. I like doing more than one thing.
Yeah. So, yes, you're a man after my own heart because you're a librarian. It's very fitting. So I think you're probably best known for your work in live music. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've covered in the last 20 years?
So much. I had a few decent-sized exhibitions over the last few years, and going through the collection, I think it's over 250,000 photos now, if I add them all up. It's a lot. 18, let me get my little list. I actually had to make a list because it was a lot. Yeah, 18 Splendor in the Grass, 8 Livids, 10 Big Day Outs, a bunch of Laneway festivals, I think 6 or 7 Soundwave festivals, and on top of those, literally hundreds of other shows, from like small little house parties to small venues, all the way up to stadiums and big international tours and things like that. So it's a lot. I've never really added it up and put a complete number on it, but I know it's probably over 100 festivals and probably approaching the thousands of regular shows.
Wow.
At my peak, I was doing about 3 or 4 shows a week every week.
Okay. That's a lot of shows to be going to.
More than anyone should see.
Yeah. You must be a bit of a music connoisseur by now as well.
It's kind of strange because you're going to so many shows, but there's all the restrictions around when you can shoot. Usually you can shoot in the first 3 songs at bigger venues. Sometimes then you're asked to leave the venue. I've also always wear earplugs because otherwise I'd be completely deaf. So you're sort of around the music all the time, but you're kind of one step removed from it as well. Though I am a massive music fan. I've got a big record collection. I've been going to shows since I was legally able. So
yes, yeah. So photographing live performance, to me, it seems like it's such a visceral experience. There's like this real sense of urgency there and immediacy. So how do you choose your shots in that kind of really dynamic environment?
I think it was something I learned. Like when you first go in, it's kind of a chaotic environment, particularly smaller shows, smaller venues where there's no sort of photography barrier or crowd barriers. You're in the crowd trying to shoot what's happening. I think I learnt fairly quickly how venues work, how stages work, how people work on stages, how they move around, how they use lighting. You kind of get a bit of a sixth sense about predicting action, where the next thing's going to happen. I also kind of research acts if I haven't seen them before. I'll look up photos from other photographers or video or whatever I can find just to get a sense of how they use the space, which gives you a really good idea of what sort of lenses you might need or where a sort of prime position in front of the stage might be, or on the back of the stage or on the side of the stage or wherever you end up being. So it can be chaotic, but I think through experience, you kind of learn to find your way through it. If you threw someone into that environment who'd never done it before, it can be quite overwhelming because you've got a massive crowd, sometimes of 10,000 people behind you. You've got an act in front of you. You've got lighting. You've got security. You've got loud noises and flashing lights. Like, it can be quite disorientating sometimes. But I think just practice. I learned how to read a stage and get some sense of, not predicting, but having a sense of how people would use the space and where they'd be.
Well, you just mentioned in there, having to learn on the job. Did you have any kind of mentors along the way?
There were people whose work I'd obviously appreciated, who sort of came before me. People like Tony Mott, who was still is a really well-known Australian photographer who did a lot of music stuff. Reading music magazines over the years, NME, Rolling Stone, all those things, you see these sort of images, so you sort of have a sense of what you want to go for. I didn't have any real training. I didn't have someone who sort of took me under their wing. I've done that for other people. I've run workshops. I've run teams of people shooting big events and things like that. But no, it was kind of very much a learn as you go kind of thing. And I had shows where I would come away with almost no photos. I had shows where I, had a lot of awesome stuff come out of it. It just varied a lot. But there was no course you could do at the time. Specifically in live music photography. It really was sort of just work it out. That's
right. So I'm just interested, did you study documentary photography or did you study art photography?
It was, I basically, all I studied formally in photography was the foundation year of photography at QCA. I didn't even do the full degree of photography. I did a film degree at Griffith and cross-registered with QCA.
Yep.
So I basically got the first year of theory and practical stuff. The bit I really enjoyed was just learning processing and printing and darkroom techniques and things like that, which I went on to use for years. I didn't really study documentary photography. I didn't really study art photography.
Yeah.
I think I just picked it up from experience and having a pretty good appetite for looking at other people's work too, and just seeing what I liked and what I didn't, and going that way. So there wasn't
Yeah.
a whole bunch of training behind it, apart from the basic skills of here's how a camera works,
Yeah.
the mechanics of it, and then the chemistry and so on of processing film and printing, which I literally used to do, leave the show, go home, process and print in a room, and take damp prints into a magazine the next morning. Which seems crazy now, but that's what I did.
Yeah, so much has changed. So what do you like best? Do you like the small, more intimate shows, or do you like doing the really big shows or big festivals?
I kind of like them all for different reasons. Like I said, if you've got a really small like house party or a small venue, it's quite intimate. You're in the crowd quite often. Everything's really close. I enjoy that sort of thing. It can be really hard work. It can be not risky, but it can be challenging. You've got to navigate through crowds and try and get a good position where, you know, there's a bunch of people who've paid for the show and bought a ticket and you're trying to get in the front row. Sometimes there's a bit thingy. And I also really enjoy like massive pop stadium shows. They're awesome fun to shoot because of the level of spectacle and production that goes into them. You know what I mean? I've shot everything from, tiny punk shows in literally someone's front room to Metallica, U2, Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, entertainment center kind of huge things. And they all hold interest for me. I find them all really fun to shoot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I really preferred one or the other.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So I'm wondering if it's possible for you to pick a favourite band or performer from over the years, and if it's not, then your favourite event.
There's been a lot. There's certain. I've got favourite venues I like to shoot at. In Brisbane, the Tivoli and the Zoo are both great. They both have great acts on, and the setup for shooting is really good in both. As far as favourite bands that I've shot, I tried to make a little list of that too, and that was quite challenging. And there's like a bunch for different reasons. Again, some are musicians who just really enjoy seeing play. Some are particularly, you know, out there performers. Some have got massive production. Some are very low key. But people like Refused, they're always incredibly energetic. PJ Harvey's a personal favourite. I've shot her maybe 3 or 4 times. Iggy Pop and the Stooges.
Wow.
Wilco I've shot a whole bunch of times. They're one of my favourite bands. There's another band called Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. They're really great. They always have this really moody lighting and stuff. Flaming Lips do these epic shows with confetti cannons and craziness. That's always really fun. Brisbane bands, I don't know, Regurgitator are always really fun to shoot. Really great performers. The Greats were really great in their heyday. Lots of just putting effort into the performance, you know what I mean, and the presentation of it. Violent Soho are always really good. I've shot them a bunch of times. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds are always good. Sort of a big epic rock show with moody lighting and the whole production.
Yes, personal favourites of mine.
Yeah. It's really hard to narrow it down. I always get tricked up by that question because there's just too many.
Yes, yeah. I can imagine. I can see we spoke about this before, you've got a picture on the wall behind you of Peaches as well at a big day out. She's an amazing performer.
Yeah, totally. I've shot her maybe 5 or 6 times by now, and it's always great.
Yeah.
Again, someone else who just puts effort into it. There's a level of production which is really cool, whether it be lighting or just the performance or props or whatever. Just make it a show. It's really great.
Yeah. So I noticed more recently, well, I don't know if it's more recently, this is the question I want to ask, but you've got a whole other bunch of photographs on your website that are sort of nature photography, landscape photography, as well as some architectural documentation. So I'm wondering, has that always run alongside your live music output, or is that something that you felt later?
Yeah, it's sort of been simultaneous. Like I've always had an interest in that sort of stuff too. Like I've got a section on my website called Rock, and then there's another section called Unrock, which is everything that's not rock. And that's everything from, like you said, landscapes, travel, architecture, some astro sort of photography, weather photos, stuff like that. I just like it. It's a contrast to the live music stuff, which can be very in the moment and immediate and spontaneous. And then the other side is stuff that's sort of more considered and slower, and you can take more time, and it's quiet, and there's not people jumping on your head, and it's just a different atmosphere. And I enjoy the results of that as well. Like and there's crossover too, weirdly, like quite a few of those landscape, weather, space photos have ended up on album covers and things.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's sort of similarly to having the two jobs. I sort of like working in more than one style of photography. It's just variety.
Yeah, and I imagine most photographers have they have their main passion or their specialty, and then they have other stuff that they do on the side for their own interest.
A bit of a personal project, I suppose. It's something I really wanted to learn, and I put quite a bit of effort into getting more skills in the area and just learning from people who have been doing it for years. It's been good. I'm always trying to learn new things, so trying to improve on that side of it as well.
Yeah, well, they're lovely. I encourage everyone to go and check it out. So just a reminder, my name's Anna Thurgood from State Library of Queensland. I'm here with Stephen Booth, one of the photographers from the online exhibition 22 Decades of Queensland Photography. It's part of our Behind the Lens Curators Talk series, and I'm encouraging everyone to comment, leave feedback or ask questions, because Stephen and I will both be online to answer those. So we've touched on this already, but there's been some major changes in photography over the last 20 years. Is it good or bad? What do you think about it?
The shift to digital, I don't know. I came up and learnt on film, which is slower but more expensive, so it's got pros and cons. Slower in the sense that you would tend to concentrate more on each frame when you were taking photographs. Like I shot, I think it was one Livid festival, which was a whole day, and I think I shot the whole thing with 3 rolls of black and white film, which is under 100 photos. Yeah. And then most people now will shoot a day of a festival, say, and come away with several thousand photos. So it's just that considering each image as you're doing it, because you have a limit. You have 100 photos for the day, and that's it. So you've got to sort of use them wisely. Yeah. The upside of digital is it's way cheaper to shoot a lot more. You can end up going home with ridiculous amounts of photos, which makes a lot of editing, but it's made it easier for people to learn. I think you just get to shoot a lot more photos. You get to see what works and what doesn't, without the expense of like $40 a roll for the film and processing every time. So that's been a big one, I think. It sort of changed the pace of how people learn. It's also been a difference in the way photography is used in the world, like, print magazines tending to not be quite as many as there were. Everything's online, It's sort of changed the value of it a bit, I think. That's why I still try and print photos quite regularly. I try and make prints and put them on a wall or sell them or have exhibitions. I think that's quite important. I think a lot of people who just shoot digitally, the photos just stay on the phone or the iPad or the computer, and that's it. They never sort of escape into the 3-dimensional world, which I think is a real shame. I always encourage people, even if they're shooting digitally, to print. Yes, just pick your favorite 20 photos and make prints,
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I've got a young daughter, and she doesn't know what photographs are. And that's kind of scary to me. But look, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry, Stephen. We've reached the end of our time.
Thank you very
much. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time out. I'm so thrilled that I was able to include your photographs in the exhibition. I think they're really stunning. And here's to more collecting in the future. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the chat, and thank you for putting the show together. I think it's really great.
Great. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.